So in this video I'm going to be upgrading the motherboard in a desktop. So stay tuned and I'll show you how to upgrade one of the most difficult parts to upgrade in a desktop computer. Alright, so I've got a desktop computer here that needs a new motherboard. It's to the point where I can't really upgrade the CPU and the RAM in it any much further, at least not any good, decent upgrade. So I'm going to go ahead and swap out the motherboard. The motherboard can be a cost-effective way to take an older computer and bring it to a more modern specifications. The problem is the motherboard, it is what it is. It's the main board. It's the main circuit board in the computer. And so replacing it can be a little challenging. And I will say too, if it is your first time replacing a motherboard, don't do it on your main computer. At least not without making a backup of your data. You do have the chance when you turn your computer back on, depending on how much changes occurred in the hardware, it may actually not boot back up. Your data would still be there, but you may get a corrupt operating system. So first, let's take a look at what we are putting into this desktop. We have a new Asus M5A97 motherboard. This is actually the same motherboard I use in my build. This is actually my wife's PC. And so it's been a good board, extremely good value at the time. All these parts together were under 200 bucks off Newegg. So we'll have the new motherboard. And let's go ahead and just pull these cables out here. We have the new back panel. Owner's manual. Should be some cables. Yeah. There we go. Some SATA cables there. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set this up on the box. You don't want to put the motherboard on the outside of this anti-static package. Although the inside is anti-static, the outside is actually conductive. So you're going to pull your motherboard out and just sit it on top of the box. I do have an anti-static surface here that I could sit on as well, and that would be just fine. But just in case you don't have that, I'm just going to show it to you with it on the box here. Now the reason I'm doing this first is because when you're replacing a motherboard, you're going to most likely be replacing the CPU and the memory. And the reason I say that is unless your motherboard is dead, you're probably going to be replacing it with a much more modern motherboard. And so you're not going to want to put your same older CPU and RAM in there, and most likely your older CPU and RAM aren't going to fit anyways. So what I have is a new AMD FX 6-core CPU, which is going to be a nice upgrade from the old dual-core CPU, AMD dual-core CPU that's in the machine. So we're going to go ahead and take the CPU out of the box. And we're going to go ahead and install the CPU into the motherboard. So we're going to go ahead and lift up our little bracket here and carefully take the CPU out. There we go. Now when you're laying the CPU into the socket, there's going to be a gold arrow on one of the corners of the socket, and you're going to match that up with the arrow that is on the motherboard. So there's a gold, just match up the arrows and just let that fall in gently. You don't want to push it in, it should always fall in. Make sure all 4 corners are in, and then go ahead and push down on the lever. Now this comes with a stock CPU cooler. You may want to buy an aftermarket one. But for the purpose of this, the stock cooler is very simple to install because it already comes with thermal paste already evenly coated on it. So it's extremely easy to install this. Just keep in mind where your CPU fan is, which is over here on this side of the motherboard. So you kind of want to make sure you have your cord going in the right direction. So go ahead and hook on the one side of the CPU cooler. On the one side of the clamp here. And then we'll go ahead and hook on the side that has the latch, which may require some force to push down. So go ahead and get the clamp on there, and then you're going to pivot this lever here all the way down. You should get some pressure, and then it'll click into place. And it's probably a good time to go ahead and plug it into the CPU fan plug on your motherboard. The reason I say that is you don't want to get this thing turned on and then find out your fan's not running and overheat your brand new CPU. So I'm going to be installing a 8 gig stick of RAM. The best thing, because this is dual channel RAM that you're putting in here, the best thing is to put 2 sticks of RAM in here. But I wanted to go ahead and get this future-proof ready. So at some point, if I use 8 gig sticks, I could actually have 4 of them in here and have 32 gigs of RAM, which is honestly probably overkill. But they had a good deal on this stick of RAM, which is a G-Skill DDR3 1600. So it was on sale, and I figured why not? I can always pick up another one down the road. There is a certain one there, it's color coded here, and one of the channels is recommended to be installed into first. So if the owner's manual wasn't inside here, I would check that. I'll confirm that later though. So just push that in there firmly until it latches in. RAM's super easy to install. Like I said, we can add more RAM in here later. So that's it. That gets the motherboard set up. This part is fairly easy. The most part to be careful about is when you're installing the CPU. Make sure you're not touching the pins. Make sure you're not pressing down and bending any of those pins. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and take the side panel off. It's a good time to wipe a little dust off here. So now we've got to take the old motherboard out. The first thing you want to do is go ahead and disconnect all the cables from the old motherboard. So we're pulling out the motherboard power connector. We need to go ahead and remove the SATA connectors. You may want to take note of where they are plugged into. It will make it a little bit easier for you. These 2 orange cables are SATA 2 and 3. These are extra storage drives. So those won't matter which order they go back into. And then, our main drive is in SATA 1. So that's that. I'll keep note of that. I think that should make sense, putting it back together. SATA 1 is our main drive, and that'll just make things much easier when we're booting back up to make sure it's booting from the right drive. So we have the power connector disconnected, we have all of our SATA ports disconnected. If this is an older motherboard, you'll probably have IDE cables, which are wide white ribbon cables. In that case, you need to make sure that your new motherboard has the proper connectors. Remove a power cable here from a video card. And we need to unplug a secondary power cable here from the motherboard. Okay. Now we have down here our front panel USB. So we need to go ahead and unplug that. Looks like there are 2 of them here. That's the front panel USB, and this is the front panel. Is this USB as well? Yes, it is. So those are both front panel USB. And let's see what we got here. This is our front panel audio. So we got all those pulled out. Now we have a speaker. So you might want to hang on to that. I don't know if the new motherboard has a built-in speaker or not. And then we have the case plugs for power, reset, and the LED lights on the front. We'll just go ahead and pull those out. They are labeled. If this is an older machine, an older case, you will want to make note of these, especially if they're not labeled. You may need to see, look up your computer case and manufacturer, because once you pull these out, if they're not labeled, you're going to have a hard time getting them matched back up. Now, I need to go ahead and unscrew our video card here. You would also need to remove any other add-in cards that are plugged into the motherboard. So we have a little lever here. Most video cards will have a little latch towards the base. So we got that released, and we just lift this up and out. And we will set our graphics card aside. Now we're ready to go ahead and unscrew all of the motherboard screws in the case. So let's begin. Alright, so we got the old motherboard. I'm going to go ahead and just lift it out. If you need help lifting it out, it is fairly safe to grab it by the heatsink. Now when you're installing back in the new motherboard, you do need to kind of take note of the motherboard that you're putting in compared to the one that you just took out. So, in this one here, try to get them kind of side by side here for you. The one I just took out is actually shorter. So if I actually line the ports up here, you can see the one I took out is actually a smaller sized motherboard. So I am going to probably need to change some of the mounting locations in the case here. So where the old motherboard stopped right here, the new one is actually going to continue all the way to back here. So I do need to reposition some of these mount points in the case. So it looks like the new motherboard only has 6 mounting points. So I have all 6 in here, and they are in the correct locations. What we also need to do, before I forget, is pop off the old back plate. And just push these in. That'll pop it out. And then you need to get the new back plate that came with your new motherboard. Make sure you put it in the right way so that it matches up with the motherboard. And they always pop in from the inside, pointing out. So we'll go ahead and just snap that in there. And it just snaps into place, pretty easy. So let's carefully lay in the new motherboard. Again, if you need help getting it held, you can always hold it by the heatsink. It's probably not the absolute best, but it is better than holding it by some of the other parts. Alright, so the first thing you're going to do when you're getting this lined up is make sure you're not dragging the bottom of it against those mounting points in the bottom of the case. You don't want to break a pin. And the mounting bracket on the side, you want these little levers, these little metal pieces to be pushed up just a little bit. You'll know once your screw holes match up. You may also need to just get one screw in there to kind of hold it in place. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little pressure on it just so I can get the screw holes to line up. And then go ahead, go ahead and get one screw into the motherboard. So now that I got one screw lined up, the other one should go in pretty easily. Alright, I've gotten all the screws back in. So now, I'm going to go ahead and plug back in the power cord here, or the main motherboard power connector. So that should make sure that's all the way in. Looks good. Then we have the 4-pin power connector. It's going to go up here towards the top of the board. So now we need the front USB. There should be a pin missing on the USB, so you should be a pretty self-explanatory which way those plug back in. We need to go ahead and plug back in our CD drive and hard drives. And then the SATA 2 and 3, those didn't really matter too much. And then the most important one, which is the main one, make sure that gets back into SATA 1. And then we have the front panel audio. Right. And a lot of this you can judge by just looking at the pins. Again, this is where your motherboard manual comes into play. This will tell you exactly how all these plug back in. But there's a port on here that I am pretty sure is our front audio. So, done this a couple times, I'm pretty sure that's it. Okay, you'd also need to plug your fans back in. All my fans though are controlled through a fan controller on the front, so I don't need to plug those into the motherboard. So let's go ahead and put our graphics card back in. We have our 6-pin power cord for our graphics card. And we need to go ahead and put back in the screw for the graphics card. this is where you're definitely going to need your motherboard user guide. The system panel connector. This is going to tell you exactly where to plug back in those cables that we pulled off earlier in the video. We had this bunch of cables, where did they go? Right here. These, the ones I told you to take note of if they weren't labeled, because these have to get plugged back in over here. And you're going to know if you got these wrong, because when you go to turn it on or hit the reset button, or you're going to notice that none of your lights work, you'll know you got one of these wires backwards. Here, reset switch, power switch. What do we got next? I think there's just one more. You have the hard drive light, positive, negative, so that goes right there. So, let's plug it in and see if it turns on. Oh. Alright, like I said, I did not put the side panel back on just yet, because we want to make sure that we don't have any issues before we get the whole thing put back together. So, just to test powering it on, I'm only going to plug in the power. In this case, I only have one monitor, but I would only plug in one of the monitors. And we're going to need at least mouse and keyboard. And the only reason I'm saying that is because after you replace the motherboard, a lot of the hardware has changed. So the less things that you can throw at Windows or whatever operating system you're using when you boot back up, the better. Alright, so this is the moment of truth. I've had this work extremely well, where it just boots up, and then I've also had it crash and burn and blue screen. Go ahead and see if we even get power. We got power. Fans are running. Let's see if our light goes blue. It's a good sign. We've got the new motherboard BIOS showing up, so it posted. That's good. Or it's posting now. New CPU installed. Please enter setup to configure your system. Okay, so it's detected change here, and we can see it is detecting the new 6-core CPU, 8 gigs of RAM, so we're going to hit F1 on the keyboard to enter the BIOS. And save changes and reset. So far so good. We're loading. Come on, give me a login screen. Oh, so, okay, yep, so there we go. It's getting devices ready. That's a good sign. Doesn't mean we're out of the woods yet. So what it's doing is it's actually setting up the device drivers for the new motherboard. Because like I said, the only thing that's the same in here now is our drives and our mouse and keyboard, but all of the components on the main board have changed, and so Windows has to rebuild all the drivers. And this is why this process can be dangerous sometimes and not work. Ah, look at that. We have a login screen. My wife will be so happy that her computer is not broken. Should be a fairly noticeable improvement in performance on the machine. So there you have it. It worked. I'm very excited. I will say that upgrading the motherboard, from a hardware standpoint, just take your time. Read the manual if it's your first time. Watch through this video, find maybe some other videos that give you more details if you're nervous about it. But replacing out the motherboard, it's just being careful with it, and making sure you get the plugs all back in where they're supposed to be. And as you saw here, it turned back on very quickly, and that is actually something I've noticed a huge improvement ever since Windows 8. That replacing even things such as the motherboard allow it to come back up. One thing I do want to check, since this is Windows 10, is whether my copy of Windows is still activated. Because in Windows 10, you got the free upgrade, and since I've swapped out all my hardware, is it still activated? So let's see. Okay, so it does say Windows is not activated. So let me go ahead and click Activate Windows and see what happens. Yep. So this was one of the things I read about with Windows 10, is that when you install major hardware changes, that it actually detects that it's a new computer, and so therefore the license key no longer works. So it's time to do some searching on the internet to figure out how to get around that. Probably just need to reactivate it and see what we get. This was an upgrade from Windows 7, so I am still in the first year, so worst case I can just re-upgrade it. But it is something to think about, that once Windows 10 no longer has a free upgrade, and I do major upgrades to my machine, does the software still work, or does it detect the hardware change and say it's no longer activated? So I've done a little digging online, just kind of looked at Microsoft's website, and they say click go to store. So we're going to see what this does here. See if this is going to make me buy it, or if this is going to be a way to, so something happened, we couldn't make your copy of Windows genuine. So let's just click try again, and we're going to get a little activation. So if this works, I will be very happy. And I understand that they're just wanting to reactivate it because they detected major hardware changes. That makes sense. If this does not activate, I might be a little more upset, because that means I have to either call them or find a way around this activation. Okay, so to update you on activating Windows 10, I did contact support, and basically said that it was the same computer, that the other computer did not exist, and that I was just upgrading the motherboard. Their official response is when you replace the core components, i.e. the motherboard, it is considered a new computer, and the digital entitlement that you received on your upgrade, your free upgrade from Windows 7 to Windows 10, is no longer valid, because your free upgrade is only valid on the machine that you upgraded to. So if you replace the motherboard, you in essence have a new machine. So my options were reinstall Windows 7, doing a clean install, and re-upgrade to Windows 10 because I was still within the first year, or pay for a full version of Windows 10. So either option wasn't really that great, but knowing I upgrade my machines often, and I didn't want to run into this again, I did go ahead and just purchase a version of Windows 10, put in the license key, and then was able to do the activation. Don't totally agree with that. I understand why they're doing it that way, but at the same time, if you bought an upgrade copy of Windows in the past, you could usually use that key, especially if the hard drive hadn't changed. So it goes either way. I think because with Windows 10, I've actually had times before where I install a brand new hard drive and do a clean install of Windows 10, and I can activate it using that digital entitlement, that upgrade that I use. So that's kind of cool. So I can replace the drive because it's still the same computer. It allows me to install Windows 10 because I've already activated the upgrade. But if you replace core components, Windows sees it as a new computer. The activation servers at Microsoft see it as a new computer. So not really happy with it. I get it to an extent, but yeah, so if you upgrade a computer that you've upgraded from Windows 7, Windows 8 to Windows 10, and you change the motherboard, you're most likely going to have to do a clean install and re-upgrade it if you're still within the upgrade time frame, or you're going to have to purchase a copy of Windows 10. So unfortunately, that seems to be the options at the moment, unless they change something. We don't know with the July 29th, I think it's July 29th, the deadline coming up very soon, if they're going to extend that, if they're going to change the policy on upgrading, but something to be aware of. So if you've had an experience like that, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know what your experiences were. Just see how that goes. But once again, I just wanted to give you an update. It's actually been a while since I actually upgraded that computer, so I wanted to give a fresh update with where I wound up with that. So thanks for watching the video, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like these.